Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz, and very happy to be joined tonight by someone else who's been doing some coughing like I have. Our wonderful police chief, Chief Dean Smith, is here, and we were just talking, thanks for being here, but we were just talking before we started that, I try and have the police chief on at least once a year. You've been here 2 years now, and this is the first time you're back on.
Yeah, I'm on my third year now. You're right. I was first time on was when I first got here. And
Yeah.
here I am now.
Yeah, 2 years later. So we're going to correct that and not go so long going forward. But, we've got a lot of things to catch up on for sure. So in the 2 years that you've been here, Chief, how has it been? What kind of footprint are you leaving in the department, and how are you doing?
Oh, well, as a department, we're doing very, very well. I'm very excited where the department's headed. The first year was a year of observation. It was a time for me to really take stock in what the police department and the city was really, where it was really heading to. So we spent the year really just surveying and really seeing what's going on crime-wise within the community, externally, and what's going on internally within the employees of the police department. It was very good to do that. I was able to determine strengths, weaknesses, determine the direction that I felt like we really needed to go as a department to impact the community, but also impact the employees. I'm a big proponent about building trust and building my employees. And so we wanted to make sure that we're setting our employees up to be successful in the future. We've made several promotions since I've been here. We've hired probably 15% of our staff since I've been here, based upon some attrition numbers. Probably one of the most significant things that we accomplished was after the first year that I was here, I took the time and moved my supervisors in different positions. Many of our folks had been in the same place for many, many years. And I really believe that allowing people the opportunity to experience something else in their careers tends to reinvigorate them.
Sure.
Tends to cause them to be more into what they're doing. And so looking at what their strengths were and looking where areas that they can grow, I place supervisors in different places within the department. And so then whenever there's change, you have this little trepidation, maybe a little scared as to what the future might hold. But 6 months down the road, you start hearing from the supervisors anecdotally, wow, this is really fun. Wow, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying the new opportunities, and I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
As adults, the opportunity to learn should come to us all the time. But sometimes in our employment, we feel like we get kind of stuck in our place. So.
Well, sure, and then you become stagnant, and then, it loses the excitement of going into work every day and that kind of thing. So that's a great idea.
And I think it energized many of our staff members, our employees, our supervisors, where they could see that they have a place here. And in doing that, we also were able to make some changes structurally as it relates to our vice and narcotics unit, and adding some supervision in other areas as well.
Okay. Any surprises since you've been here? You came from out east down.
In Virginia.
Virginia,
yeah.
That's right. So east, sort of southeast. It's a different climate. I don't know how that factors into crime, but I'm sure it plays a role in there somewhere. Different kinds of crime, perhaps, than what you saw back home. What surprises have you seen?
I wouldn't really call them surprises. It was just acknowledgement of, you're absolutely right, crime is a little different here in relation to where I came from. Back east, there's probably more violent crime, more assaults, more robberies, aggravated assaults, or substantial batteries. Here, it's more property crime driven, which I think is a really part and parcel to the overarching problem that we're having, which is the opiate problem in the communities, not just here in Oshkosh, but throughout the country.
Right.
The impact that opiates is having on our society, I think, is a big factor of driving property crimes. I joke around, or I not so jokingly say, if we could solve the opiate issue, we probably would solve 80% of our crime here in the community.
Wow, 80%? You think it's that high related to the opiates?
Yeah, with your vehicle break-ins, with any type of assaults that might occur, you have burglaries. Typically, these are folks who have really lost any source of income they might have, and now they got to find income to support
Sure.
their habits. So they're taking from folks, and that's a shame. It's unfortunate to everybody.
Wow. Well, it is a shame, but boy, 80%, I mean, that's a tough number to kind of wrap your head around, because that's a lot.
It is. It is. It is.
Wow. Any hurdles that you've had to kind of overcome a little bit since you've been here? Or it sounds like you really have a very good handle on things.
You know, it's been very good. There, you know, in law enforcement, we have our critical moments. We also have our moments where we can plan and we can really make a significant impact about what's going on. And as far as hurdles, there really hasn't been anything that jumps out as really overbearing or difficult for us to adapt to.
Sure. Well, we don't want to jinx that either.
No, we really don't. Let's find some wood and knock on that.
Well, I don't have it. Well, I do have a little wood here. We'll knock on wood there. You know, as I was thinking about today's show and talking about, you know, the change that the city went through with a new police chief. Now we're going to have to get a new fire chief.
A new fire chief.
We're getting a new school superintendent in a few months. We had to adapt to Stan Mack II when he came. And I don't mean adapt in a bad way. It's just, as human beings, I don't think we really deal with major change all that well.
Right.
You know, it's something that we're not really comfortable with. But the changes that have been made with these major roles in the city, including yours, it's been so seamless, you know, and I think that's in part to a couple of things. I think it goes partially to the hiring processes that these different agencies are using. I think it goes to the folks being brought in, like yourself, Chief, you know, and how I really love the fact that you sat back for 1 year and just kind of looked at things and said, okay, because, you know, you can't just come in and start making changes.
No.
You know.
And the Oshkosh Police Department was a great police department before I got here. It really was.
That's why you came.
That's one of the most important reasons why I came. Those persons like me who may be looking for what their next career move is as it relates to chief of police or even fire chief, you certainly can be attracted to places that are well run. And the Oshkosh Police Department under Chief Groyle was run really well. And it's an opportunity for me, as you said, to sit back and just see how the operation was running. And you know, certainly we took care of some things in the beginning that we needed to get addressed as it relates to policies and how we actually do things. But all in all, it's a well-run department.
Well, great. Yeah, it was very seamless, and I know even personnel, you know, they must think, geez, you know, we got someone new coming in, what's going to happen? And there's all that fear and trepidation.
Sure, it's about building trust. I had to spend time working with my staff for them to trust in what I'm trying to get accomplished. And there's 140 some odd employees in the police department. They're all looking at me and going, who is this guy and what's he going to do to us?
Sure.
And you have to understand that. You know, I tell my staff all the time, you know, bad stuff's going to find us every time we have a chance for it to find us. So let's enjoy ourselves in the times that it's not finding us. So we create an environment of levity in the police department where we can have a little fun. We laugh, we discuss, we strategize, and then when critical times come, it's about taking care of the primary business of why we're here, which is taking care of the citizens of Oshkosh.
Sure. This just occurred to me, and it's not even on my list, so it's not in any kind of special order. But one of the things that I have seen, you know, some other police departments in our area doing, and I'm wondering if we do it here. I've not heard about it, but that doesn't mean it's not being done. You know, so many people are selling goods on social media now and so forth. There's so many different, whether it's garage sale or, you know, whatever, even through Facebook. A lot of police departments are starting to make they're not inside the building necessarily, but they're starting to say, hey, if you want a safe place to make your transactions, you know, do it at the police department. Is that something that we're doing in Oshkosh or not?
We're not currently doing it. It's something that I certainly have considered. There's another piece that goes along with that. Some departments also use their parking lot and their cameras for safe drop-off for children, for you know, those homes that may have a divorce where you need to have a place where you can do the exchange of children for visitation. We've just been accomplishing a lot of things, and we still have a lot of things that we're trying to get completed. and all these things take time.
Sure.
I often joke with my staff, if I gave you everything that I wanted to get accomplished, it'd be like putting a fire hose in your mouth and firing it up, because you wouldn't be able to take it all in. So we're slowly getting to the things that are critical right now and are very, very important, and then we can work towards those other things later.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Like, for example, what would you have to put into place to allow someone to just make an exchange of goods versus money in the parking lot?
Well, you want to create an area that you don't need the parking, first of all.
Yeah.
That's certainly a commodity around
Sure,
here, and
yeah.
we may have an opportunity presenting itself shortly with the courts moving across the street into the courthouse that are in the public safety building. So you want to have an area that people can park at, and then you want to be able to have a camera on there, and then you need signage, and then you just advertise that it's there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and for anyone who is doing trading like that, I mean, I think it's just a good idea to do it in a public place anyway.
Yeah.
You know, rather
Sure.
than, I mean, obviously, if you're selling a huge piece of furniture or a big appliance or something, you can't drag that off to somebody's parking lot, you know. But for smaller type things, I just think it's a good idea to do things in a public place where you're a little bit safer and protected. So, one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about is when I think maybe Chief Groyle had instituted this. It was an email list that, you know, because you guys are so big into the community policing and neighborhood cop on the beat kind of concept. And for a while there, you could sign up for a specific newsletter
Right.
for your area where you lived. And you know, working in the media, I would get all of them, not just the one in which I lived. But I haven't seen one of those in a long time. Has that been discontinued, or do I have some kind of a glitch going on?
Are you speaking of our notification that we do to landlords and so forth? Because we have a system, an automatic system that does that for any crimes that occur on their properties.
No, this was, well, that would be helpful too. But this was more related to any type of crime that was going on in that district, if you will.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the Blue Chronicle, I believe.
That might be what it was called, yeah. Is that still?
We actually did a transition of our media department, basically. Our public information officer, Joe Nichols, is now back on the street, and we have Kate Mann in there. So she's doing a lot of getting out of the office, proactive, reaching out to the community. We have our 9 p.m. lockup that we do on Facebook. Hey, go lock your cars up at 9 o'clock at night, just as a reminder. She hasn't done that because she's been so busy with everything else. And we really haven't seen a folks saying, hey, I missed this. You're the first one to tell me that you missed it. Because we are being very transparent in what we do through our social media platform. So it may have just been a transition into new technology.
Yeah, and that could very well be. I do really like what you guys are doing on social media. You know, I've subscribed to it. It's not just Twitter, but it's Facebook. And, you know, for anyone who wants to look, you can go right to the police department's website, which is oshkoshpd.com. And from there, I think you can link up to your Twitter account and your Facebook account. And, you know, it's great for very timely information. Not just time sensitive, but timely information.
Yes.
You want to know if a road is closed or you need to know about it, it's there.
Well, we have a pretty significant following, if you will. We have almost 20,000 followers on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
So we're using that now for information pieces for the city as well. We have some very proactive followers, we'll call them, and they're quick to respond when we post something out there. And so we recognize that we have a responsibility in the community to share as best as we can along the way. And you know, we're not always going to make everybody happy. I know that. It's the nature of what we do. You can disagree with me. I know that. It's the nature of what we do. You may not like what law enforcement does, but I believe in being transparent in what we're doing, and we're going to continue to be that way.
Sure. Well, that's just so much better than, you know, stuff being done that people don't know what's happening, and then they start speculating about what's happening, and before you know it, you've got a whole bunch of rumors going on about something that probably by the time it reaches the 10th or 15th person, it's completely blown out of proportion. So transparency, I just think, is always a very good thing. Let's talk about some of the real specific kinds of crimes that we're seeing in the area. I mean, certainly sex trafficking is one that's getting a lot of publicity on the news and so forth. But what are we seeing here besides, and we'll talk about sex trafficking, because ours is a little bit different story, as I found out from you a short time ago. But what are we seeing here? Property crimes, you said, for sure.
Yeah, it's primarily property crimes, and the traditional law enforcement model that people are used to with police really has transitioned. No longer are we just answering calls for service because somebody had a break-in or they had their vehicle broken into or somebody shoplifted or something like that. Now we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues. That takes up a lot of our time. I want to say I got a report last year. We responded to well over 200 mental health calls where we did commitments last year.
Wow.
So the mental health issue within society really is growing, and that's significant for us. That's a lot of manpower, a lot of officers that are taking their time to ensure that we're serving as best as we can in that particular segment of our community that needs that help.
Sure.
So that eats up a lot of our time. So the traditional policing of taking a report and responding to somebody's needs, that kind of evolves a little bit, and then we're dealing with our domestics, and we're dealing with certainly some of the alcohol issues that are within the community itself. OWIs, they take up a lot of time. We have a lot of issues that we address that may not necessarily result in a charge or somebody being cited for something, but we're trying to take care of the smaller issues early so that they don't become bigger issues later on.
Sure. The 200 commitments that you had last year, are those commitments where people are threatening suicide and they're committed on a 72-hour hold?
Yes, pretty much so, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, suicide is getting to be such a big thing too. So
Yes.
these were all folks who were, because they had some
indicated
mental
that they wanted to
illness.
hurt themselves, yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Do you, and I ask this because I just had a situation like this come up with a friend of mine in Tennessee. Just last week, she told me about a person that she knew who was threatening to kill himself. Now, when you come, and I said, well, did you call the police? Well, no, they talked to him and that was, about it. Of course, policing somewhere else is very different than it is here. So when you get a call that someone is threatening to hurt themselves, do you, before you take them away for a 72-hour commitment hold, do you talk to them and sort of survey to see if there's some seriousness there, or is it just an automatic commitment?
No, we spend a lot of time with them. We're evaluating them. We want to get them out of crisis if we can, and then we'll work with crisis workers. We'll work with mental health workers to let them know what we're hearing. We're kind of like the eyes and the ears on the street, and as a team approach, we'll determine whether or not they need to spend some time on a 72-hour hold so we can get them some help. Many of our officers are now CIT trained, crisis intervention trained,
Okay.
which is incredibly important because that helps us de-escalate somebody who may be in a mental health crisis. And if we can bring them off of that precipice and bring them down a little bit, we can really hopefully find out what's going on with them that's causing this crisis.
Sure, good. Well, mental illness, now I'm going to go off my little itinerary here a little bit, because that is what is driving so many of these mass shootings that we're seeing around the country. Just out of curiosity, how do you feel about armed guards or armed officers on school campuses?
Well, I think that they're force multipliers for us. I know that the governor's working towards some school safety measures, and there is some talk of a grant program out there for the school districts to help fund some security out there. I think a trained security officer or supplanting what we do with our school resource officers, allowing us to add more school resource officers, is a win for everybody.
Sure.
school resource officers have been in schools for decades, and
Yeah.
they serve a dual purpose, which is to help both internally and externally. And we have the opportunity just by our presence to keep peace within a location. Me showing up like this is a deterrent sometimes to
Sure.
bad things happening.
Sure.
So I think that having armed police officers or security that are well trained, I think is a plus for any school system.
Not armed teachers, though, right?
I
Or-
don't support armed teachers.
Okay.
No, I don't think that's the right answer.
Well, they have a tough enough job, just to teach.
Right.
And then you want to add something more onto what some of them do. I just don't. I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, you have to consider that police officers spend many hours training, both in how to identify those persons who can be a threat, those persons who are a threat, and then how to respond to those that are a threat. It's what we do every day, and I don't think it's fair to expect that a teacher would be able to respond in the same manner that
Right.
a police officer would.
Well, at this last school shooting now in Florida, there was that one officer who got a lot of flack, as did the I think it was the sheriff, the county sheriff, not a police chief, but whoever. He got a lot of flack, as did the sheriff or chief. And, I live with a law enforcement officer, and I know how you guys are trained. You're not necessarily trained to just go in by yourself, guns a-blazing, until you kind of have a sense of what is happening. And, everybody was saying, oh, this guy, he should have gone in. Even our president said he should have gone in and that he would have gone in. Well, we don't know what he would have done. But, I think we just have to have facts about why he didn't go in before we start bashing him for not going in.
Well, I agree with you. Looking from the outside in, without having all the facts in front of me, I don't choose to pass judgment upon that. There are a lot of things that probably occurred, maybe good, maybe bad, but as an outsider looking in, I don't feel like I'm equipped to say whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. If you speculate, then you can fill in the voids, just like we talked about before.
Yep.
And certainly people have very strong opinions on both sides of that equation. And without having all the facts, I don't think it's fair to everybody to make those assumptions.
Yeah, and you don't know what you're up against. At that point, he didn't know how many shooters were probably in the building. And unless you've got backup in a situation like that, how much help can you really be?
Well, and one of the things that we certainly have done here is anytime something critical like this happens, we're going to look at it as best as we can, and we're going to ask ourselves, how would we respond to the circumstances? And it would be my expectation, and I have complete faith in our school resource officers, that faced with similar situations and there was no immediate help in the area, that our SROs would have gone and confronted the threat. It's just built into them because they care so much about their kids, because they are their kids. And, we look for specific traits in our school resource officers, and they're moms and dads, and they want to take care of their kids, and essentially they're going to take care of their kids, which are the kids in the school. So I believe they would have gone, and it would be my expectation that they go in. And we've had those conversations.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about school resource officers, Chief, is that something different from the liaison officers?
It's the same thing.
It is.
We call them school resource officers now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they're no longer called school liaison officers?
Yes, they're school resource officers now.
Okay. All right. I got to keep that in mind. Names and titles are always changing. And do we have one in every school, or is it?
No, we don't. We have 5 right now.
Okay.
That work throughout all the schools.
Okay.
We have one assigned each of the high schools, and then we have some that share middle schools.
Sure.
And then they also work through the elementary schools as well.
Okay. Well, hopefully we don't have problems starting at elementary level.
Yes.
It's bad enough when they get to be middle school age and high school age and there's problems. I was thinking about that. When I went to high school, and I know I'm dating myself here, but I graduated in '75, so we're talking over 40 years. we just didn't, even bullying, certainly you had some bullying, but it wasn't to the level that it is today because we didn't have social media, but we just didn't have a whole lot of problems. I don't even know if we had to have a resource officer in the school or if there was one at all. I mean, the biggest thing, and it was legal, we had a smoking area, which was weird. And a lot of us drove cars to school when we got to be of driving age. But we just didn't have any of these kinds of issues. I don't know that I would be happy or comfortable being a parent in today's society. There's so much pressure on these kids.
Well, there is, and I think that somebody could do a study on how social media has impacted our lives.
Yeah.
And there's both good and bad that go along with that.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of pressure on them, and certainly we didn't have the societal issues when I was growing up either. That would I don't even recall if I had a school resource officer when I was in high school.
Yeah, I don't remember one for sure.
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking about that. Did I even have one? I don't
Yeah.
think I did.
I always heard about truant officers, but I never really saw one,
Right.
and I never really knew who one was, or if they were with the police department or a special school employee, or I had no idea. I was a good kid. I went to school when I was supposed to be there. But, we just didn't have these kinds of issues. And I think you're right about social media being, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You almost have to have it, and yet far too many people, not just kids, but adults too, don't know when to just shut it off.
Right.
And, you see people all the time out to dinner, and they're not talking to each
No.
other. They're sitting there all on their phones doing their own thing. It's like, what is this all about? And, I think as adults, we should be setting examples for these kids that certain things are okay to do and certain things aren't.
I agree.
So, well, let's talk about drugs and gangs. Obviously opiates, you said, is a huge, huge problem.
Yes.
What about gangs and other drugs besides opiates?
Well, one of the areas, again, we discussed it earlier, is in that evaluation trying to figure out exactly what was the root cause, I believe, of some of the issues, and certainly drug usage here in the community is a significant issue, and because of that, in January of 2017, I reconstituted our drug task force. I added more staff to it. I included a supervisor and created the Vice and Narcotics Unit. And they're tasked only with investigating narcotics crimes and any vice crimes such as prostitution and human trafficking. And they've been incredibly successful over the last year. They far exceeded any expectations that I would have put on them. I was able to choose some very hard-charging officers who understand the legal system and understand the laws as they are, because it's really, Fourth Amendment rights are very prevalent when you get into narcotics investigations,
Sure.
and we want to make sure we're doing it right. And I was able to place a supervisor in there who had the experience. He's well experienced. He has hair similar to ours, and he knows how to woe them down when he needs to. But they were incredibly successful in conducting narcotics investigations, and really hit it out of the park. They really have.
Oh, that's great. And yeah, I mean, you were talking earlier about the sex trafficking or human trafficking, and it is not as prevalent here as we hear about in other parts of our state and nation, for that matter.
Well, we probably have led, I know we've led the Fox Valley in doing prostitution investigations. And we do those not because we necessarily want to track down prostitutes, but we do those because we want to find those persons who are victims of human trafficking, of sex trafficking. And last year we actually recovered 4 victims of human trafficking through our prostitution investigations, and I think that's a win.
Yeah.
We conducted 115 prostitution investigations last year. Arresting both prostitutes and pimps and johns, and we were able to, again, rescue 4 people that were victims of human trafficking, which, with Oshkosh where it's situated on 41, and with with all the events that we have going on, there's a double-edged sword to events. There's good things that happen,
Sure.
and when you put a lot of people in one place, people will take advantage of that opportunity, and there's bad things that can happen. So when we have major events come into the area, we're going to ensure that we're doing our part to keep everybody safe. And we found some victims that were shipped in here. One case occurred last year. We helped Nina out with it. Really, there is no street corner anymore. There's virtual street corners. So a lot of what we do is online.
Okay.
And we found a person online who was actually in a hotel in Appleton, or Nina, and she had just arrived from New York, like 48 hours prior to being plopped in a hotel in Nina. And she's from China. She didn't know where she was, and we were able to connect with her and rescue her from this terrible thing that goes on.
How does something like that happen? I've had folks on before talking about sex trafficking, human trafficking. So here we've got someone from China, and she all of a sudden comes here. Tell us a little bit about how that happens. How are they recruited, and why here?
Well, there's different ways of this recruiting that may occur. I mean, here because of locality, because you look at the Fox Valley area and you think, well, it's not Chicago. It's still small towny, and probably there aren't resources to catch me. So that's one thing that a pimp may think about.
Okay.
But in this particular case, those who are coming from other countries are looking to get to the United States, and they got to pay their way, and they're offered an opportunity to come here, but you're going to have to pay me back, and this is how you're going to pay me back.
Okay.
This is your fee. This is how much it costs, and then they end up getting into this lifestyle that is very difficult to get out of. But then you have others. You have others who aren't from that aren't from out of this country.
Sure.
They're locals, or they're from other states,
Yeah.
and they're kids, and they get sucked into this lifestyle because maybe they have issues at home. Maybe they're from a broken home, and they really get groomed by those who would be a part of this, and I can give you a better life, and these are all the things you got to do, but it's going to be okay because I'm going to take care of you.
Sure.
And
so they become kind of like their family because
Yes.
they're not
Yes.
having good relations
Yes.
with their real family.
Yes.
So these folks who are being brought in from other countries, how are they getting in, with respect to immigration laws?
That's a puzzle piece that we really don't have a piece of that here. We just know when they show up, and we try to address it as they come before us. But there's any number of different ways that they certainly come in. We know without getting into the big debate about the Mexican border, but there are people who traffic across the Mexican border, and they'll bring them over, and they got to pay their way, or they'll hand them off to somebody who's going to sponsor them, if you will, here in the United States. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's Mexicans that are coming across the Mexican border. It could be that's the avenue that they're coming in from Europe, just because that's how they can possibly get in.
Well, it's a fascinating thing, and yet it's a very sad state of what's happening with some of these women and the young children too, that they're just sold into a type of sexual slavery, if you will.
Right.
And it's just a shame. So I want to talk about, a couple of things that came out of a roundtable meeting. State Attorney General Brad Schimmel, it was February 6th, he held a roundtable meeting at the County Sheriff's Department. You were there. And it was different law enforcement agencies, it was elected officials, Health and Human Services folks, and you guys participated in this roundtable conference about criminal justice activity within our county. What sort of came out of that?
Well, really, I think what the Attorney General's doing is he's really scanning the whole state. He's hitting every county, and he had a stated goal of doing these roundtables in each county to see what the needs are in law enforcement throughout the whole state.
Okay.
I think the prevalent theme, once again, is mental health and the opiate abuse.
Sure.
He's finding that in all of these roundtables. There's really no surprise. It's every county is facing similar problems.
Sure. Well, if he's going to hit every county, he's got a long road to hoe since we've got 72 counties.
Well, and
in
he's been doing this now probably a yearish.
Okay.
He's,
Is he trying to do like one a month? Or?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Well, he'll eventually get to all
Yes.
72.
Yes.
Another thing that was sort of announced at that was something called a Safe Seniors Camera Program.
Yes.
And this is to help seniors who are who reside in nursing homes and things like that.
Actually,
or what is
no.
this really for?
No, this is for if you have a loved one, an elder parent that is maybe has some home health care workers coming in to your home.
Okay.
And you suspect that they may not be taking good care of.
Okay.
You can reach out to the Attorney General's office, and through the local DCI office, they'll partner with us, and we'll just help facilitate the installation of cameras. And it's a 30-day program. We're part of the pilot. There's a select law enforcement agencies in the state that are part of it. We're fortunate that Oshkosh is one of them. It goes all the way to Brown County, Fond du Lac, Appleton is a part of it, Green Bay is a part of it, where you can reach out to us, and at no charge, you'll be able to have this camera that will be installed in your house, and you'll be able to see what's going on.
Wow. And so you said it's a 30-day pilot program? Or?
Yeah, it's a 30-day program for your residents. The
Okay,
pilot
I
program is
see.
going to be going on for a good long time, but essentially the state will install a camera in your house for 30 days. If something's going to happen, typically it would happen within that time frame. And if there's nothing happening, there's nothing happening. We'll pull the camera back out and reuse it. But if there is something happening, we'll have some evidence to prove it out and
Sure.
continue an investigation.
Yeah, because this elder abuse that's something else that I don't know if it's occurring more because we're more aware of it now, and it seems like it's happening a lot more, or if there's just more abuse happening. But either way, I mean, abuse of anyone, it should not happen, and elder abuse, it makes my skin crawl.
Well, and
know?
elder abuse can come in many different ways, just either physical or financial. Many folks who are seniors, if they become victims of any financial crimes, many times they don't want to report it because they don't want to talk about the fact that they may have been taken out of a portion of their life savings. So they
Yeah, sure,
tend
it's
to-
embarrassing.
They tend to hold on to that, and they don't want to share it until a loved one who's trying to care for them figures out there's a substantial amount of income or money that's disappeared. Where'd it go? And they become a victim of some financial crime, which is very unfortunate.
Sure. Do you put in just one camera or a few different cameras in the areas where these people are most apt to be with their,
We'll do
charge?
whatever we need to do.
Okay, there you go. There you go. All right. I think that's a good idea. And while we're on the subject of cameras, we're seeing more and more on the news where people have cameras outside their residences, catching people doing whatever ill will they're doing and nonsense that they're doing, crimes against the property. Or I think one of the funniest ones I saw lately, and I don't know if I saw it on the news or if this was on social media, but these folks had a camera outside their home, and these two hoodlums had bricks, and they were going to throw them through the windows. Well, the first one threw his, but his friend was right in his way, and it clocked him right in the head, knocked him out. Did you see that?
I think I did, yes.
It's craziness. But are you seeing more people in our area having cameras outside their residences?
Yeah, there are companies out there that are doing doorbell cameras, and they're actually creating a virtual mesh network of cameras throughout the community, and they can provide you that opportunity to see what's going on at your house and record the video. I recently was at some training, and I was able to test one of these systems. And stay tuned. It may be something that we're bringing to Oshkosh where we can help out the community with these types of cameras.
Sure.
And if somebody is a victim of a crime, hopefully we'll have a video of it. Some of these doorbell cameras, you can communicate with them. You can set off alarms, and you can have spotlights turn on. And if you make your residence a not attractive place, just like alarms were years ago, then they'll go somewhere else where they think that it's a little lesser of a target.
Sure. Well, and they're not all that expensive.
No, they're not.
My cousin has a business in another state, and he was getting victimized and vandalized over and over again. And he got several cameras.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe 13, 15, 20, I don't know. Maybe not even quite that many. But they're all around.
And you can
he
get your smartphone out and you can
Yep.
sit wherever you're at and look at what's going on
Yep.
at your house.
He can sit wherever he wants to sit, whether he's on a tablet, a phone, a computer, and he can see what's going on.
Yes.
You know, and some of the images, you know, some are grainy, of course, that we see on TV sometimes, but some are pretty doggone good.
Some of these doorbell cameras, they have better images than some of our businesses have. They have
Wow.
better cameras going on now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if someone, I know you said that there's a company that's kind of going around doing this without giving the company name. Is it just one or?
There are a couple out there.
Okay.
And you've seen some advertising for them. And
Okay.
we may be looking to partner with one of them to help bring another service to the community.
Oh, that would be great. I want to talk for sure about, you know, if you see something, say something. This is something that it's a phrase that we're hearing over and over and over again. And, you know, I think about that in relation to so many things that are happening in our world. You know, people are now in Austin, they're putting package bombs on people's doorsteps. You know, that kind of reminds me of the Unabomber many years ago. Not saying that this is going to be to that level, but it's pretty damn low
Yeah.
when you're just setting bombs in packages on people's doorsteps. And you know, the guy in Beaver Dam that we just heard of, who was making a bomb or making bombs in his home, of course, you know, he was killed by his own devices, literally and figuratively, but all these other people in his apartment building have lost their homes, their personal possessions, many of which were treasured photo albums or what have you. Now, maybe someone didn't see anything going on, but if they did, if they even suspected the least little thing, people should be saying something. And I know as a society, people are, you know, we don't want to get involved. We're
Right.
kind of apathetic that way. Don't want to create problems if there's no problem. Don't want to give our name, but you don't have to give your name
No.
when you call the police.
No.
I just feel like not even if you see something, say something, but if you suspect something or you hear something, say something. I mean, it doesn't hurt to just, we always hear about, after these shootings, we hear about everybody, oh yeah, he posted this on social media, and yeah, he had this in his house, but nobody ever said anything beforehand. And how many of these things could have been prevented, or even the severity and number of casualties lessened by someone saying something?
Well, and it brings up a good point, and I think that hopefully we're turning the corner where people are really understanding the importance of being a part of the solution. Even after the shootings that occurred in Florida, we had a couple incidences in our school system here where students stepped up and said, hey, I saw something, and they reached out to us, and we were able to investigate that, and whether or not we prevented a tragedy or not, certainly I'm not at liberty to talk about that, but
Sure.
we know we were able to take some folks into custody that were doing things that weren't good, and there was an opportunity for bad things to happen because somebody said something to the school or to the school resource officers, and I hope that we're turning the corner on that, and not just in the schools, but anywhere else. If you see something, I want people to reach out to us and say, you know, I'm not sure if this is wrong, but I wanted to tell you about it because it may be that one little piece of the puzzle that we've been looking for.
Sure.
And we're collecting all this information, but we can't get that one last piece.
Yep.
And that could be that one last piece that causes us to go, aha, we do have something going on.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that everybody just needs to, you know, it's like a big community watch sort of program or a neighborhood watch. That's what we need to do. We should be watching out for people. And even, we don't have to know them to watch out for them. And in the end, you know, who knows what we might be preventing? And we might be helping ourselves in the end, too, by preventing something that could have somehow affected us or negatively impacted us. We talked about some of the events that, you know, trafficking happens at. This was your second Sawdust Days event,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's made a big improvement from the first one that you had, right? Right?
Yeah, we had less occurring, yes.
Well, that's a good thing. Now, what would you attribute that to, Chief? Was it because of some of the new rules that were put in place?
Yeah, I think so. I know there's a lot of discussion in the community about we want it to be like it was. Well, unfortunately, in our society, like we've been talking about, you can't always do things the way it's always been because we have to be prepared for what may come our way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was, a lot of freedoms that were there that maybe by putting some rules or guidelines in place, it may have limited people's ability to do certain things. There was certainly a lot more officers there to ensure that everybody was safe, and I think we had a better opportunity. Huh.
You're wanted.
I am. I think we had a better opportunity to monitor what was going on because we had more staff out there. We had more people available to really keep a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
And we did limit some of the activities, and but we really just created a footprint, and then we allowed the Sawdust Days organizers with some guidelines to create how they wanted it to be laid out.
Sure.
And they said, "This is our plan." We said, "Great plan. Let's try it." So there's going to be some adjustments again this year, but some of the similar rules or constraints, if you will, that we had in the previous year to try to limit some of the things that are going on.
Yeah. What about Country USA and is it called Rock Fest USA?
Rock USA and Country
Rock
USA, yeah.
Are we starting to kind of turn the corner on some of those things too, with some of the issues that have been going on? And also, is it a safer environment out there now for people? Because I know that, people were having to walk along dark roads and so
Yeah.
forth.
Well, that's a unique situation out there because the law enforcement service is shared with the Sheriff's Department and the Oshkosh Police Department. We handle the outside stuff.
Okay.
And the Sheriff's Department handles all the security on the inside based upon it kind of straddles the city and the county.
Sure.
We really try to keep the roadways open and keep people safe walking, and so we keep variable message boards out there. We try to do what we can to keep. We have highway patrol state patrol comes out and they'll monitor the vehicle traffic to try to keep it flowing, and we do the best that we can with what we have.
Sure, absolutely. A couple of other things, events that have taken place. There was the Guns and Hoses charity event. How did that go? Because that was just this last weekend.
That was this past weekend. We had two events occur on the same day.
Yeah.
We had the kids and cops basketball and the Guns and Hoses hockey game. They both went off really well. They're exceptional turnouts. The kids and cops basketball is the third time we've done this. It's an opportunity for the youth in the community to work with the police officers in a different light, where they see us as just men and women out there. We're having a good time interacting. But this year we had a talkback session with some of them too, where we would relate. What are your thoughts about police officers, and having conversations with police officers in a non official, we'll call it, capacity, where sure. I'm in there having a conversation with them wearing shorts and a t-shirt and basketball shoes. I mean, it's a really great opportunity for the kids to see police officers in a whole new light.
Yeah, yeah. And this was the first time it was held at the Herd Arena.
Yes. Because
the Herd Arena wasn't there before. How was that? Did that draw in more people, do you think? Or
it was really, the kids really enjoyed that. They enjoyed being able to play on a professional basketball court. Is something that you don't always get the opportunity to do.
Right.
And they had an opportunity to interact with one of the players. He did an introduction and a talk back with them as well. And I think that it was kind of inspiring to them.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. I also, we're running short on time here, but I want to talk about the department's accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that a lot of folks know that some police departments are accredited and others aren't. We in Oshkosh are very blessed and fortunate to have our department have a dual accreditation.
You paid attention.
I did. And this, just to go through one accreditation process, it's a heavy it's a heavy thing that you
Yes.
go through. I mean, they look at everything. Why don't you tell folks what the dual accreditation is and, you know, the kinds of things that they look at, because it really does speak to a very professionally run police department.
Yes, we are actually the only municipal law enforcement agency in the state of Wisconsin that's duly accredited.
Wow,
We're,
I did not
we're,
know that.
we're accredited at the national level as well as the state level. And that says a lot about the history and legacy of the Oshkosh Police Department and what we try to do. Through accreditation, they're going to make sure that our policies are in line with, through the national accreditation through CALEA, our policies should be lining up with national standards. Law enforcement experts from throughout the country and actually now internationally will review what is best practices as it relates to being a professional law enforcement agency. What is it that we need to do to represent that we're actually doing what we say we're doing within our policies. So there's a lot of reporting out, there's a lot of interaction. There'll be an assessment team that comes in. They'll sit and review all of our policies. There's over 400 standards that we have to meet in order to successfully get our accreditation. This is our 8th accreditation here in the city of Oshkosh, going back to 1994. That says a lot about the commitment that the city has to having a professional police department. And to do it both nationally and at the state level, I think it gives us a flavor of what professional law enforcement agencies throughout the country actually are doing. And then at the state level, they mirror many of the things that the national accreditation looks for, but then they look at the state-specific issues and making sure that we're meeting those standards, and we can actually prove out that we're meeting the standards. Just because you have a policy that says you're going to do something, demonstrate to me that you're actually doing that. So it's a full-time process to make sure that we're providing what they call the proofs, so that when somebody looks at our documentation, they go, yep, they're doing exactly what they say they're doing, and they're meeting the standard that we're asking them to do.
How long does the accreditation process take?
Well, through the national accreditation, it was a 3-year reaccreditation cycle, and this past year it just went to a 4-year reaccreditation cycle. But what we have to do is each year prove out all of our policies each year.
Okay.
So we actually have some software programming that we use now, and we can electronically send our information out and showing our proofs along the way. But we've already started for our next accreditation, which is 4 years away. If you don't keep up with it now, then you'll
never get caught up.
No, you'll never get caught up because it requires action. It requires that when we'll use an example, if we have some critical incident that occurs and we say in our policy that we're going to do a debrief of the critical incident, then you need to do the debrief and you need to prove out that you did the debrief. If you don't do the debriefs, you didn't follow your policies.
Right.
If we have specific policies as it relates to our evidence, and we have high value evidence items, and we're required to keep those separate from low value items. Well, you have to do an audit of that. Well, if you don't do your audit, then you're not going to pass your accreditation. And the audit keeps folks like me feeling comfortable that, I know that my staff is doing a great job, but now I'm proving that my staff does a great job and they're following the laws and following rules as we ask them to do.
Sure. As part of the process, Chief, does anyone actually come out to the department and look things over?
Yeah, when the actual reaccreditation period in this point, it'll be 4 years from now, there'll be a team coming out, and these are accreditation examiners from all over the country. This year we had 2 that came in, and they'll observe the department. They'll do open phone-in sessions for citizens to call in to see what is the interaction with the community. They'll interview key stakeholders within the community to see what the relationship is between the police department and the community as a whole.
Okay. Well, congratulations on that. I did not know that we were the only department in the state that had,
I'm pretty proud of
the
that.
dual. You betcha. You betcha. We should all be proud of that because it's our police department.
Yes.
So the only one in the state that has a dual accreditation. We've got about 4 minutes left, and I just in that time I want to talk about something kind of fun, I guess. I'm big into law enforcement. I live with someone in law enforcement and all that kind of stuff. So I love to watch crime shows on TV, and one of my favorites is Forensic Files. And, you know, the equipment that law enforcement agencies have to figure out, I mean, a little tiny piece of hair or the grooves on a shotgun or a gun and the bullets and matching up ballistics and we don't have all this kind of fancy schmancy equipment here, right? But it's available
It
like
is
in
available
Madison
to
or
us,
Milwaukee
yes.
if needed.
Yeah, the state crime lab really helps us out immensely. It's very, very expensive to have much of that equipment, DNA processing, looking at the lands and grooves of a shell casing, trying to match up any type of tool marks that occur. There's forensic examiners and scientists that are in Madison and other crime labs that we can reach out to, and we can say, hey, we need you to test this or compare this, and we use them in court when we need to. It is a science, and there's actually a full degree program in many universities now for forensic science. That anybody can attain a degree if they apply themselves to it, and be a forensic examiner, be a forensic evidence custodian or a collection agent.
Sure. I even saw one where they were trying to find if this family had committed this murder against their daughter-in-law, and in the one guy's case, his sister-in-law, and they were actually examining dirt and concrete off their property. I mean, who would think about that? You know, you wouldn't think that a batch of concrete would be different in one place than it is in another, and yet very different.
Right.
Very
Right.
different. I saw another episode where a nose print of a dog was used to help solve something.
Well, we can
And the
take
hair of a
we can
dog.
take broken glass, and we can compare the glass fragments from a burglary, we'll call it. As an example, in my younger days as a police officer, we had a burglary that occurred, and we ended up catching somebody outside, and he said it wasn't him. Well, lo and behold, glass breakage. We shine a flashlight on him, and he looked like he was lighting up like a Christmas tree. So we were able to recover some of those glass fragments and match them up to the building. It can be as simple as that, or it can be a DNA analysis on a strand of hair.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I'm so fascinated with it. And they come up with some of these long names of equipment that they use,
Yes.
and I'm like, wow, who ever heard of something like that? But
Yes.
it's fascinating stuff. It really is. So, well, this has been a great hour. I'm glad that we were able to do this, and I promise it's not going to be 2 years again. So, but thank you very much for being here, and congratulations again on what you're doing with the department and on the dual accreditation.
Well, thank you for having me.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So, all right. Won't be 2 years again, I promise. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to all of you, thanks to the chief, and thanks to the crew. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.